Welcome to Larp Academia, and today we're going to talk about scheming in Vampire the Masquerade. Now, scheming is the primary activity that you will be doing, individually, of course. Some LARPs have fighting with boffers as the main activity, but you need to be constantly scheming, constantly thinking of what to do next. How will you achieve your goal? And, well, is your goal even worth it to achieve in the first place? Now, Vampire the Masquerade, as we've talked about before, is a social LARP. It's a LARP where you go out there and you end up trying to further your ends. If you're not doing anything, then you will eventually be used and become a pawn yourself. That's why we have a video about becoming the prince or doing something extraordinary, which I will link in the description down below. You might not want to be the prince. You might not want to do any of those things, and instead you want to scheme for some other personal goal. The goal that we use as an example in our article on scheming down in the description below, and the goal that we will be using in this video, is an example of trying to find your suitor. Let's say you are embraced one night, turned into a kindred, and then find out that, oh, I don't know who embraced me. You need to figure out why. Why did this person embrace me? What plans do they have for me? Because no vampire would embrace someone just because. I mean, they might feel like they want to further the bloodline or have someone to look after for some particular reason. But most of the time, us vampires are selfish creatures. Your suitor may have created you for their own means. They may have wanted a soldier on the front line. Maybe they've already blood bonded you. You don't know. You need to figure these things out. So you would need to scheme in order to find your suitor. Now, when you start a scheme, you should try to always start it with what tools you have at your disposal. You already know, for example, that when you are trying to find your suitor, that you are a great investigator. So you should use investigative skills to go to the scene where you were turned, find out what you know or what you could know, and then use that information. Make deductions that this person was here that night, that person was there that night, and then try to figure out everything that you can about what happened on that night. Of course, you might not be an investigative type. Understandable. We're not all going to be detectives, but we all have our own separate skills. You may have computer skills. You may be able to hack into a person's information. You may be able to hack into the security cameras and find someone who would give you a lead, something to go off of. You need to use what tools you have at your disposal, which is why in our character creation tips, in another article in the description down below, we highly suggest that you make your character more well-rounded, not just a gunslinging shooter or a would-be samurai on the streets. No, you have to have more than that. You should have something else. Maybe you could use your occult expertise to try to divine something. It may not be the safest route, but you should have something to go on. Get as far as you can with your own means, and then work on using others. Now, before you learn the tips and tricks on how to use others, you need to learn the importance of secrecy. Us vampires are monsters at heart. Well, we don't really have a heart. Well, we do, but it's metaphorically we don't have a heart. And since we don't metaphorically have a heart, we will betray each other in the first instant. Vampires are selfish creatures, and if we consider someone a friend, it's just an echo of what we once had. We don't really consider them a friend, and if our personal safety is put on the line, well, choose ourselves all the time. I mean, it's just common sense, you would think. So you need to be secret about this, because what if your end goal was detrimental to someone else? What if this suitor didn't want to be found and wanted to use you as a weapon at the right time? What if your end goal was in complete contrast to someone else's goal and that person was extremely powerful? Well, they could snuff you out in a heartbeat. Well, a human heartbeat. And they could make it so that you will suffer a final death. That is why secrecy is important, and you cannot trust anyone. You cannot have a close confidant and say that, oh, we're friends, we won't have any issues. No. You need to use others properly. Now, how do you use others? Well, there are a few ways you can use others, and some people may say these ways are a little underhanded or unethical, but again, I remind you that we're monsters, we're vampires. Ethics are for the stupid humans out there. No. Using others is an art that you will need to master. It is actually the primary art of Vampire the Masquerade. And a few great ways to use others is to use them in a way that they don't even know they're being used. A great example of this is that you make some tragedy befall them. Oh, maybe someone came and torched the vampire's dwelling. Well, that vampire will want retribution, obviously. So the evidence that you make is that you plant seeds to lead them towards a certain vampire that is either a roadblock in your goals or someone you want to take care of. You then make this grudge happen. You cause that vampire to kill them, or at least cause some damage that you could swoop in and finish the job yourself. The key is to use others appropriately and to make sure that they don't know about it. Because if you try to trust them as a confidant, oh, will you please take care of this person for me? Again, self-preservation. Why would they help you? There's no point in that. It's stupid. But sometimes you can't just blindly make people do what you want. You can't just make them be sent towards a direction. You need information at times. You need to figure out where this person will go, what they'll be doing, and in doing so, you should make up a convenient lie. Never tell the truth. The truth will get you in trouble. Unless it's a half-truth, then, all the better. But you can easily just make the conversation go in the way you want. Change the flow of it. And all you need to do is to make a simple but somewhat personal lie to them. Now, an example of this would be, oh, well, why do you want me to investigate this person? Since you yourself are not a good investigator, you hire someone else to do it, and that vampire or human, whatever, is curious. You would say that, oh, well, I know this person. They're a deep friend, and I need to see what's going on with them. Or you could say that I think this person's up to some shifty business, and it might be against the prince from the information that I've gathered as a vampire. You could make some lofty accusations that have a personal touch of concern to them. And since you added that little personal touch, others are more likely to believe you because you're giving them something about yourself. You're giving them a bit of truth, a bit of trust, and making them want to help you because, obviously, you are depending on them in order to solve your deep-seated problem. And a vampire might take this and try to use it against you, but even if they do, you've given them a false foundation to work on. And this is something that you need to worry about when you try to start your scheme. You need to make sure that your foundation, the base information that you have to go on, is not planted, is not false, is something that is actually true that you found out, and not, again, something that another vampire or other party has made appear truthful. The core foundation of your schemes. Because if this is false, if this is faulty ground that you've built your scheme upon, you could be used by someone else. You could be that person that we talked about who was tricked and is going to deal with this other vampire or human or whatever, And for someone else's goals and schemes, you need to be able to identify when these false beginnings happen. And this is difficult. You need to look at the situation, see if it's natural, if it's planted, be constantly questioning things, and in your own best judgment, figure out if this is actually a true lead to go on, or if it's a false lead planted, like something you would do. Now, how do you figure this out? What is the secret to magically knowing when something is true and when something is false? Well, that takes experience, my friend. It takes experience in the world of darkness, and you'll have to have a keen insight and hone your instincts to figure out if you are being the master or the fool. Now, I hope that this has helped you with your scheming and that you at least have a little bit of a starting point to go on. Schemes can become much more intricate and are hard to address in a general manner, but the key points are: never trust anyone. Be careful with what you do. Use everything that you can at your disposal. And when you use others, don't use them as allies. Use them as tools and pawns in your own game. Because really, that's all that you can do with them. And that's all that they're good for. Until next night, stay safe.